name is Kent, founder of bydesignsoil.com, and I wanted to put some videos out on soil biology and explain soil biology and the fundamentals of it and make it simple and not overwhelming. I know it's a complex subject and it can be very overwhelming, especially for growers that may have a couple thousand acres and they're thinking, okay, we got to put 3 or 4 or 5 to 10 yards of compost on per acre. This is not that. This is make it a lot more simpler. What's one step you can do today to start improving your soil? I have 40 years experience in the green industry, studying soil and soil systems and working with different products. The last 5 or 6 years, I've had the opportunity of working with Dr. Elaine Ingham at the Soil Food Web School, and I am a certified consultant for the Soil Food Web. The biggest question that I probably get over the years in talking to growers is, where can we learn this? Where can we get access to this information? Where do we learn how soil biology really works? How compost fits into it, and how to manage soil in a way that builds long-term stability. You know, most of us were trained to manage soil chemically, but very few of us were ever taught how soil ecosystems actually function. These videos are meant, along with my website, bydesignsoil.com, to fill that gap. Whether you're managing corn or soybeans, turfgrass, gardens, compost systems, the same ecological principles apply. And one of the most important of those principles is soil succession. I believe it's not only a measuring stick, but it's a place to start. It's a goal to work for, and like I just mentioned, you can measure yourself along the way. When soil is understood as a living system, the whole management changes. Your decision process changes, and once you understand succession, many of these soil problems and crop and plant problems seem to make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to start and we're going to look at, there's soil succession charts online. You can Google them and come up with the picture, but I've kind of come up with my own. I have 2 different ones here, but we're going to look at the first one first, and I'll just throw the last one in kind of toward the end, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. But let's just talk about this chart, and let's talk about soil succession and how it can affect your management choices and how it can increase the biology fairly quickly. So let's get to work. Okay, here's our first chart. When we talk about healthy soil, one of the most important things to understand is who's doing the work down there. So what we're going to do is start at the very beginning. This is by no means all of the biology, but this is the front line right here. At the front line of decomposition in the soil are bacteria and fungi. And the fungi, obviously the fruiting bodies of the fungi are the mushrooms, and the kind of the lit up spots here you see are maybe infection points in the roots where fungi enters the roots. And then the colorful oblong, round, can be different shapes and sizes, are the bacteria. These organisms are the primary decomposers. Their job is to break down organic material like plant residues, root exudates, compost, and crop residues. Bacteria are usually the first to respond. They multiply very quickly and are excellent at breaking down the simpler carbon compounds such as sugars, proteins, fresh plant materials. They usually break down the hotter manures and things like that too. Fungi, on the other hand, they're specialists in breaking down more complex materials like cellulose and lignin, things like stems, leaves, woody residues, things like that. They'll even break down rock, sand and rock too over time. Together, both of these, bacteria and fungi, act like the biological engine of the soil. As they consume organic material, they convert it into forms of nutrients
that can move through the soil food web, and we will hit on that in a little bit. But at the time right now, they retain these nutrients in their bodies. As bacteria and fungi grow and multiply, they are then consumed by other organisms such as protozoa and nematodes. When that happens, nutrients like nitrogen are released in plant-available forms right in the root zone. So when we build healthy soil biology, what we're really doing is supporting these frontline decomposers here. The better bacteria and fungi function, the better the entire soil system works, bar none, and the more efficiently nutrients cycle to feed plants. Healthy soil begins with supporting these microscopic workers that are constantly rebuilding fertility beneath our feet. Now, let's take what we've learned about bacteria and fungi and let's apply it to the soil succession chart. When we talk about soil health, one of the most important concepts to understand is this soil succession. Just like plant communities above the ground move through stages of succession, the biology in the soil follows a very similar pattern. On one end of the succession chart, we have early succession soils. These are soils that have been recently disturbed. This could be tillage, it could be construction, it could be overgrazing. Another one is forest fire. There's different things like that can set the succession back to start. In these early stages, the soil is dominated primarily by bacteria. And bacteria are extremely fast-growing organisms, and they specialize in breaking down the simple materials like sugars and fresh plant residues, like we talked about a few minutes ago. These kinds of bacterial soils are actually well suited for some weeds and maybe some annual plants, and for gardeners, brassicas, cabbage, broccoli, things like that. Many of our agricultural crops, such as corn, soybeans, and vegetables, perform a lot better in soils that have a fairly even or fairly balanced ratio of fungi to bacteria. As time goes on and soil becomes less disturbed, something very interesting happens. Fungi begin to establish themselves in the soil. Fungi grow more slowly than bacteria, but they play a critical role in soil structure and nutrient cycling. The fungal hyphae or the shoots, they act like microscopic threads that weave in and out of the soil, and they bind particles together, and they build stable soil aggregates. Fungi are also capable of breaking down more complex materials like cellulose and lignin, which are found in stems, leaves, and woody residues like wood chips and things like that. As fungal populations increase, the soil begins moving further along the succession pathway. In these mid-succession soils, we start to see plant communities dominated by grasses and perennial plants. This is where many pasture systems and turf grass environments tend to function the best, with a balance of bacteria and fungi working together. As succession continues even further, fungi will become more dominant. This later succession soils are what we typically see in forest ecosystems, where fungal networks are extremely extensive and deeply integrated with plant roots. One more important takeaway from this chart is that different plants prefer different stages of soil succession. Annual crops often perform best in soils that are balanced. Grasses and perennials tend to prefer soil with balanced and maybe a little on the fungal population side. Trees and forests are usually associated with very strong fungal dominance. So the goal of soil management is not simply to maximize one type of organism, but rather to guide the soil biology toward the stage of succession that best supports the plants that we were trying to grow. Let me throw this other one up here. Okay, so this one is a little bit different, but it's basically the same thing. But what I want to emphasize is management practices have a huge influence on where our soil sits on the succession scale. Frequent disturbance, like the heavy tillage, certain fertilizer practices tend to push soils back toward the early bacterial stages. On the other hand, practices such as reducing disturbance, maintaining living roots by planting cover crops, adding compost, and increasing plant diversity help encourage fungal development and biological balance. When we understand soil succession, we begin to realize that soil health is not just about adding inputs, it's about managing the biological direction of the soil ecosystem. And when that biology is functioning properly, the soil becomes a living system that naturally cycles nutrients, builds structure, and supports healthy plants. Now, that is a real foundation of regenerative soil management. Now, just to review, soil is never static. Every decision you make moves succession somewhere. High nitrogen applications, reset towards early. Deep mechanical disruption, reset towards early. Heavy salt accumulation, reset. Organic matter integration, progress. Reduced disturbance, progress. Balanced nitrogen, progress. The soil is always moving. The only question is which direction.
So in wrapping this up, I wanted to direct your attention to my website also, because I am going to put just as much free information on there as I can. If you go to bydesignsoil.com and click on the Soil Biology 101 tab, I have many fact sheets on there, and I'm going to add one or two every week for as long as I can. I've also written a series of field manuals, one about compost, and that's the biggest, that's kind of the flagship one right now. I wrote one for corn and soybean, and for turf grass management, and for homeowners for lawns and gardens too. I'm working on pastures and grasslands and orchards right now, so those will be on here in the near future. But I have those for sale on there, and they're easy to understand, step by step, a little more detailed like what this is right here, from beginning to end. And you can get a PDF download on those immediately. There's a charge on those. I also have a coil-bound field manual that you can also order. There's some shipping and stuff added to that, but I want to keep this shorter than this. We've gone a little bit long on this video. I want to keep it a little bit shorter, and no hype and no BS, but just, you know, just the facts here. So check out my website, and our next video is going to be how plants can actually manage the soil underneath them without our help. So that gets pretty interesting too. So thanks, and we'll see you next video.